In an unexpected turn of events, Donald Trump reveals shocking secrets about Jimmy Kimmel during a live national broadcast, leaving millions stunned. What started as a routine comedy roast transformed into a political bombshell that could forever alter the landscape of late-night television. With Kimmel now facing public backlash and potential legal trouble, this explosive moment might just signal the end of his TV reign. It was supposed to be just another comedy roast. Late-night laughs, light-hearted jokes, cameras rolling. But this time, something was different. The 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, had agreed to appear live on national television for a friendly segment with Jimmy Kimmel. The studio was packed, and millions tuned in from home. No one knew what was coming. Kimmel started with his usual jokes, poking fun at Trump's mannerisms, his past, and his policies. The crowd laughed, but Trump didn't laugh. He sat still, calm, too calm. Then, with a chilling smile, he leaned toward the mic. "Jimmy, do you really think America doesn't know who pays your bills?" The laughter stopped. Kimmel's face tightened. Trump slowly reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. "For years you've mocked me, lied, called me names," Trump said, holding the pages up to the camera. "But tonight, Jimmy, I tell the truth." The studio fell silent, and that was just the beginning. Kimmel tried to laugh it off, but Trump didn't budge. "These," he said, lifting the papers, "are bank transfers. From political groups, from Hollywood elites, from liberal insiders, all paying Jimmy Kimmel to mock me. Not because it's funny, but because it's planned." Gasps filled the room. "Over $2.5 million in the last 3 years, Trump revealed, flipping through the pages. Labeled media influence. Kimmel's hands were trembling. "Jimmy, you weren't joking. You were working." The crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Viewers at home clutched their remotes. Trump added, "While Americans were struggling, losing their jobs, getting censored online, you, Jimmy, were being paid to make them hate me." People began whispering. A woman in the front row had tears in her eyes. Trump's voice softened, more human. "They didn't just mock me, they mocked you. They mocked the farmer, the factory worker, the mom praying for her son overseas." Then Trump looked straight into the camera. But not anymore. For the first time in years, Kimmel didn't have a comeback. He stared blankly, sweat beading on his forehead. Trump calmly placed the stack of documents on Kimmel's desk. "You say you speak for the people, Jimmy, but you were paid to trick them." A woman in the audience stood up, then another. Applause broke out, scattered at first, then louder. It was like something inside the crowd had awakened. "Tell the truth," someone shouted. Kimmel looked shaken. He fumbled for a response. "This is nonsense. These are fake. This is crazy." But Trump pulled out one last sheet, a signed email. "From your own manager," Trump said, handing it to the camera crew. "Authorizing a comedy segment in exchange for a donation to your foundation, paid by a top Democratic lobbyist." It hit like a thunderclap. The studio went silent. Kimmel's lips quivered, and then something stunning happened. One of the camera crew put his headset down and walked off set. It was no longer a roast. It was a reckoning. America was watching, and hearts were beginning to break. As Trump stood tall, the lights of the studio seemed dimmer. The camera zoomed, and the country held its breath. Trump unfolded one more paper, a contract signed, stamped, dated. It showed a secret agreement between a shadowy media group and Jimmy Kimmel's production company. The deal: mock Trump weekly, stick to the script, boost ratings, hide the truth. Trump didn't scream or shout. He simply read the final line out loud. "Failure to follow messaging guidelines may result in withheld payments." Kimmel's jaw dropped. He tried to grab the paper, but Trump held firm. "This isn't a joke anymore, Jimmy," Trump said, turning toward the audience. "You've been lied to, night after night." The crowd murmured. A man in the third row shook his head and whispered, "My wife believed everything Jimmy said." Tears welled in people's eyes because it wasn't just about jokes anymore. It was about trust. And America was realizing it had been fooled. A soft voice broke the tension. I believed him. Everyone turned. An elderly woman in the front row stood up. She wore a blue church dress, her hands trembling. I'm from Ohio. I used to watch this show every night, she said, looking at Jimmy. I laughed when you mocked Trump. I shared your clips. I defended you. She paused. But I never knew you. We're lying. Kimmel tried to interrupt, but the woman raised her voice. My son lost his job. We were hurting. And I mocked Trump too because of you. But now I see he was fighting for people like me. And you were getting paid to tear him down. The audience sat frozen. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You made me hate a man who was trying to help. Trump stepped forward, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. You were lied to, he said softly. But now you know. The woman nodded. Thank you. And for a moment, the country watching felt something crack inside. Hearts broke, eyes filled, because the truth had finally walked into the room. Kimmel tried to speak, but nothing came out. His mouth opened, then closed. His usual smirk was gone. The laughter had vanished. The light suddenly felt hotter, brighter, harsher. He looked around as if begging someone, anyone, to save him. But no one moved. The audience wasn't clapping. They weren't laughing. They were listening and feeling. Trump walked to the center of the stage. This is bigger than politics, he said. This is about honesty. He held up the final document, a leaked email from a major Hollywood studio executive. The subject line read, "Push the anti-Trump jokes, we'll handle the rest." Kimmel's face dropped. He leaned on his desk, breathing heavily. I didn't know they'd release this, he whispered. Trump looked at him calmly. You didn't have to read it. You just had to cash the checks. There was silence again. A camera operator, tears in his eyes, lowered his lens. Even the crew felt it. Now. And as Kimmel sat down, head in his hands, the people watching at home began to see it too. This wasn't a takedown. It was a truth unveiling. And the pain it caused was real. Just when people thought it couldn't get worse for Jimmy Kimmel, Trump revealed a handwritten letter. This, Trump said, holding it up, was written by one of Jimmy's own writers. He mailed it to the White House 2 months ago. No return address, but we found out who he was. The studio gasped. He was tired. Tired of the lies, Trump continued. He couldn't sleep knowing he was part of a show paid to divide America. The letter was short, honest, painful. Mr. President, I don't agree with all your policies, but I know unfairness when I see it. We were told what to write, and we were told never to make you look human. I'm sorry. Trump paused. He looked out over the silent crowd. That man quit his job the next day because even he couldn't live with what this show became. Kimmel stared at the ground. A mother in the audience was crying. This wasn't politics anymore. It was people. And America was finally seeing the truth word by word, page by page. Roll the clip, Trump said firmly. The giant screen behind him flickered to life. What showed next stunned the room. It was behind-the-scenes footage leaked from inside Jimmy Kimmel's writer room. In it, producers and staff laughed while mocking. Trump supporters calling them names, mocking their faith, their accents, their jobs. One voice stood out. Jimmy's fans are too dumb to know we're acting. The audience went cold. A few covered their mouths. In another part of the clip, an assistant asked if the Trump jokes were going too far. A producer replied, "We have marching orders. Keep going." Trump stood silently, arms crossed, letting the footage speak. When it ended, the room stayed quiet. No applause, no music, just heartbreak. A teenager in the audience whispered to his dad, "They were laughing at us, weren't they?" His father didn't answer. He just stared ahead, eyes wet. Trump finally spoke. This is what late night became. Not comedy, but cruelty. A paid package delivered. And for the first time, even the viewers at home stopped laughing. Jimmy Kimmel couldn't hide it anymore. His voice cracked. His lips trembled. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. But it was too late. The footage, the contracts, the letters, it was all out there. He wiped his eyes, struggling to speak. I was just, following the show, doing what they told me to. They said it was harmless, that it helped the ratings. Trump didn't interrupt. He just listened. And then calmly he said, "You didn't just attack me, Jimmy. You attacked people who worked double shifts, veterans, single moms, farmers, people who only wanted a president who would fight for them." Kimmel dropped his head into his hands. The room was still. One by one, people stood from their seats, not to clap, but to walk out. A cameraman whispered, "I can't do this anymore," and unplugged his rig. Millions watching at home were in tears, some in pain, some in regret, some in shock that this was even real. And through it all, Trump never raised his voice. He didn't need to because the truth had done all the talking. Just when the air began to settle, Trump turned to the host's desk and reached under it. He pulled out a bundle of white envelopes, each sealed, each marked with a name. "These," he said, "are letters written by your own audience, regular Americans, people who once trusted this show." He held one up. "This one's from a woman in Kentucky. Her son served overseas. She said Jimmy's jokes made her feel like her family's sacrifice was being mocked." Trump opened the envelope and read her words aloud. "Mr. Kimmel, every time you laughed at President Trump, it felt like you were laughing at my boy in uniform. We didn't vote for fame. We voted for someone who finally cared." The room was silent again. Trump laid the envelopes down one by one across the desk, each one a small piece of America's pain. Kimmel's hands were shaking, and viewers at home weren't just watching anymore. They were crying. This was no longer a broadcast. It had become a breaking point. Without warning, the studio lights flickered, then blackout, just for a second. When the lights returned, several audience members had left. Some were outside crying. Others stared blankly ahead. Kimmel's team rushed backstage. The director was pale. "We're losing the feed in Middle America," he said. "They're shutting off the TVs." But inside the studio, Trump remained calm. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," he said. "I came to expose the truth." He looked directly at Jimmy. "You were supposed to be funny, but instead, you became a weapon. You didn't mock power. You served it." The sound guy removed his headset. "I've worked here 12 years, he said, "and I never knew it got this bad." A tear rolled down his cheek. Even Kimmel's makeup artist stepped away, arms folded, watching the man she once admired fall apart under his own spotlight. This wasn't politics anymore. This was accountability, and America was witnessing history. Then came one voice from the back. "I served 2 tours in Iraq." Heads turned. A man in a wheelchair decorated with faded military pins rolled forward. He had scars on his face and fire in his eyes. "I used to laugh at your jokes, Jimmy," he said, "until one night you called guys like me brainwashed." He paused. "My buddy lost his leg in that war. He voted for Trump and you laughed at him for it." The room went still. "I don't care who you vote for, but you don't get to insult sacrifice." He turned to Trump. "You're not perfect, but you showed up, and tonight you told the truth." The veteran saluted Trump, and the studio, one piece at a time, began to shift. Hearts cracked wide open. Tears flowed quietly, even from those who had once laughed the loudest. Kimmel lowered his head, not in shame, but in realization. Trump stepped forward again, holding a final folder. "This is the one that broke my heart," he said, voice lower now. "It's not about jokes. It's about betrayal." He opened it and slowly revealed a list of donors, not to a charity, not to a children's hospital, but to Jimmy Kimmel's private media slush fund, a hidden account used to quietly accept money from political operatives. The names were shocking: lobbyists, Hollywood elites, and top liberal strategists. All marked anonymous in public, all exposed tonight. "These people didn't donate to help the public," Trump said. "They paid Jimmy to destroy me, to divide this country, to laugh while people lost their homes and their hope." He looked around the room. "They paid him so he'd keep you laughing and distracted." Someone in the crowd shouted, "We were fooled!" Another voice whispered, "I trusted him." Tears welled up in a teenage girl's eyes. She wasn't crying because of politics. She was crying because something she believed in had shattered, and across America, millions felt the same. The red applause, sign that hung above the crowd, didn't flash anymore. No one was clapping. The room that once echoed with forced laughter now sat frozen in raw truth. Kimmel looked up at the sign, then turned away. It was over. He tried to stand, but his legs wobbled. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he mumbled. "I thought it was just entertainment." Trump stepped back, giving him space. "Entertainment ends when pain begins," he said. The audience remained silent. From the second row, a young man stood. "I voted for you twice, Jimmy, but my dad died from COVID, and you made fun of Trump's response every night while he was trying to save lives." Kimmel didn't answer. He couldn't. The man's voice cracked. "My father believed in Trump, and I laughed at him. Because of you." A sob escaped from the man's throat, and in that moment, the camera zoomed in. America watched a son grieve publicly for the shame he felt. No cue card could fix it. No script could spin it. This was truth without makeup, and it hurt like never before. Just when the stage felt unbearably still, a woman in a headset stepped from backstage. She was the executive producer, the one who approved every script, every joke, every agenda, and she was holding a resignation letter. "I can't do this anymore," she said. Kimmel's eyes widened. "Please, Linda, don't," she cut him off. "I've worked in media for 23 years. I thought we were informing people, but we weren't. We were manipulating them for power, for money." She turned to Trump. "I don't agree with everything you say, but you showed up. You told the truth, and that matters more than anything right now." The room was dead quiet. Linda placed the resignation on Jimmy's desk, then turned and walked away. The audience began to shift, not with applause, but with understanding. Because what they saw was bigger than politics. It was a human moment, a nation beginning to wake up. And as the camera panned out, showing the studio from above, you could see it clearly. The stage was collapsing, but the truth was standing tall. The stage was in pieces. The audience was shaken, and then a soft whisper came from the back row. An elderly black woman stood up, her hands raised slightly, her voice trembling. "Can I say a prayer?" Everyone turned. She stepped into the aisle. "I came here tonight to be entertained, but now I feel something I haven't felt in years. Conviction." She closed her eyes. "Lord," she said softly, "forgive us for laughing at lies. Forgive us for mocking truth, and bless the man brave enough to speak it tonight." Tears ran down her cheeks. A ripple of emotion passed through the room. Trump didn't move. He just listened. The woman opened her eyes, now locked on Jimmy. "You made me laugh when my husband passed, but tonight you made me cry for the truth I ignored." She sat down, and the room, once filled with fake applause and phony scripts, now sat in sacred silence. This was no longer a show. It had become a national confession. Backstage, a phone rang. Urgent, direct. One of Kimmel's assistants answered, and her face turned pale. "It's the White House," she whispered. "They want to speak with President Trump." Immediately, Trump stepped aside, answered the call, and kept it short. When he returned, he looked more serious than ever. That was the Speaker of the House. "They're opening an inquiry, not against me, but against the media." The audience gasped. "They've seen the footage, the money trails, the lies, and they want the truth made public in Congress." Jimmy's mouth fell open. Trump continued, "This isn't about me. This is about how far we've fallen, how media sold out working families for politics and profit." Someone in the back shouted, "Hold them all accountable." Trump nodded slowly, and then he turned to Jimmy, now pale and quiet. "You wanted to destroy me with jokes, but tonight the truth destroyed the lie." And just like that, the empire of laughter began to collapse under its own weight. Jimmy Kimmel looked like a broken van. He stood, he took a breath, And for the first time in years, he didn't joke. He looked straight at the camera. To every family I hurt with my words, I'm sorry. The room froze. A tear rolled down his cheek. I thought I was helping, but I see now I was being used. He turned to Trump. I mocked you. I slandered you, judged people I never met, and now I realize what I became. Trump stood still, not proud, not angry, just quiet. Jimmy continued. You didn't just survive the jokes, you exposed the game, and I respect that. For a moment, even viewers at home wept because this wasn't a punchline. It was a man admitting his failure on national television, and it hit everyone, from small towns to big cities, from soldiers to single moms. They felt it. The truth had not just won, it had broken hearts wide open. The live broadcast was still rolling, and then unexpectedly, one of the top producers stepped forward from the side of the stage. The man was shaking. My name is Alan, he said, his voice breaking. I've worked on this show for 10 years, and I helped hide the truth. Everyone turned to him. He held up a flash drive. This has everything. Emails, instructions, direct, payments, the real plan. We were told who to mock, when, how. The audience gasped. Jimmy looked at him stunned. Alan, why now? Because I've got 2 daughters at home, Alan replied, and I don't want them growing up in a world built on lies. Trump stepped forward and nodded. Give it to the public, he said. Not just me. Everyone deserves to see it. Alan handed the flash drive to the stage manager, then walked off, head held high. In that moment, the air in the studio changed. It wasn't about Trump or Kimmel or TV. It was about truth finding daylight, and America was listening. Backstage, staff were panicking. Phones buzzed nonstop. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, they were exploding. Clips of Trump exposing Kimmel had gone viral within minutes. Hashtags were trending. Kimmel exposed. Trump was right. Media manipulation. People were sharing their stories. Real ones, from veterans, teachers, grandparents, all saying the same thing. We believed the lies, but tonight we saw the truth. Trump sat off stage with a quiet look. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. He was simply still. Then a journalist from a major network approached him. Mr. President, you've just turned the media world upside down. What now? Trump replied with just one line. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here for the people. Those 5 words lit a fire. News anchors who once mocked him now struggled to explain what they'd seen. Commentators stammered, and ordinary Americans cried because they felt they'd finally been heard. Not as numbers, not as voters, but as people. It started with 1 person, then 3, then 10, and suddenly the entire studio audience stood up. They weren't cheering. They were crying, clapping softly, slowly, from the heart. Not for entertainment, but for courage. Trump looked around, clearly moved. He didn't raise his arms. He didn't boast. He simply nodded. Then something unexpected happened. Jimmy Kimmel, red-eyed and broken, stood beside him. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But maybe this can be a turning point. He turned to the audience. I'll step down after tonight because the truth deserves a louder voice than my own. There was no applause, just respectful silence. Because this wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about healing. As the final camera angle widened and captured both men on stage, one humbled, the other steady, the audience watching at home didn't just see a moment. They felt it. America was hurting. But finally, it was waking up. As the cameras rolled into their 3rd hour, a woman quietly stood in the 3rd row. She held something folded in her hands. It was a triangular American flag, the kind given to families of fallen soldiers. Her voice trembled. My son died in Afghanistan. He was 23. The room stilled. Even the crew stopped moving. She looked at Jimmy. You made jokes about Trump pulling our troops, about the chaos, the mess, but no one asked what it meant to people like me. She looked over at Trump. When you called me after my son's funeral, no press, no cameras. You just said, thank you. She paused, holding back tears. And then I turned on the TV and heard Jimmy call you a joke. She unfolded the flag and whispered, "My son didn't die for a joke." Even Jimmy lowered his head again, and Donald Trump stood still, his hand over his chest. People in the audience wept because in that moment, the lies ended. The flag wasn't just cloth. It was a mother's heart, broken, but finally heard. As the emotional tide rose, another person came forward, a public school teacher from Michigan. She held a small notebook in her hand, tattered at the edges. "I teach 8th grade civics," she said. "Every Monday, we'd start class with a late-night comedy clip, usually from Jimmy." She looked directly at the camera. "But last year, something changed. My students stopped asking questions. They started mocking each other instead." She opened the notebook. "These are notes from my students. Trump is evil. MAGA people are dumb. Only dumb people vote red." Her voice cracked. They weren't thinking anymore. They were repeating. She turned to Jimmy. "You weren't making jokes. You were planting seeds." Jimmy covered his mouth in shock. Trump looked at the notebook and gently took it. He turned to the audience. "This is what the media did. They made politics into poison, turned our kids into parrots. But we can fix this." The teacher nodded. "And it starts with truth." The crowd stood again, this time in quiet respect because the classroom had been invaded. But that night, truth became the best lesson of all. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. The network cut the feed. Screens across America went black. A technical error message appeared. But inside the studio, people knew the truth. They were being silenced. Trump didn't panic. He stepped forward and said, "Record this on your phones. Let them try to stop us." Everyone pulled out their phones. The cameras kept rolling on social media, on live streams, on backup servers. "Let the truth go where the signals can't," Trump said. Jimmy looked around, stunned. His studio had become a battlefield, but not one of hate, one of healing. "I thought this would be the end of my career," Jimmy whispered. Trump nodded. "It might be, but it could also be the beginning of something better." The studio, now completely off the air, had become the most honest place in America. The audience wasn't watching anymore. They were participating. And outside, across the country, people were waking up one stream at a time as phones recorded, and millions watched the stream online. A man quietly stepped forward from the shadows. He was wearing a plain gray suit. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "I'm Pastor Raymond from Georgia," he said. "And I never thought I'd say this, but tonight I believe something holy is happening here." The room grew quiet. For years I warned my church about what was on TV, but I was called old-fashioned, judgmental. Then Jimmy's show started getting played at youth nights. They laughed. They copied the jokes. He paused, heart heavy, and my own son started to hate this country. Tears filled his eyes. But tonight I saw that hate die, not because of anger, but because the truth showed up. He turned to Trump. "You were mocked for your faith, sir, but you never stopped praying, never stopped standing." Trump nodded slowly. No one cheered. No one needed to because faith had just entered the stage, and for the first time in years, the light was stronger than the laughter. It happened within minutes. The flash drive Alan gave earlier was uploaded, online, not to just one site but to multiple servers, journalists, watchdog groups. The evidence was undeniable. Emails, memos, texts, clear instructions from powerful donors to Kimmel's team. Amplify anti-Trump narratives, steer youth humor segments against middle America, insert ridicule, avoid fairness. And most shocking of all, a secret payment ledger. Names, amounts, hidden accounts. It was all real. News networks scrambled. Some tried to downplay, but the truth was spreading like wildfire. Even celebrities began to post. "We didn't know. I was part of the lie. Forgive us." Jimmy sat quietly, his head down. He wasn't a host anymore. He was a man facing everything he helped build. Trump stepped forward. "You tried to burn my name," he said. but now your hands are covered in ash. And just like that, the nation saw something it never expected. Not a takedown, but a turning point. The room was silent. No music, no applause. Just one man standing behind his desk for the last time. "I'm resigning," Jimmy said, his voice breaking. Effective immediately. He removed his mic and placed it on the table. "I don't deserve your laughs, not after what I helped cover up." He looked toward Trump. "You didn't just survive my words, you outlived them with truth. I'll live with that." Trump didn't gloat, he simply nodded. Then Kimmel turned to the audience, tears running down his face. "Forgive me. Forgive us all for what we let happen." One by one, people stood up, not to clap, but in silent recognition. The lights dimmed. The stage that once thrived on mockery now faded in repentance. And outside the studio, a new sound began to rise. The sound of a country healing. As Jimmy Kimmel stepped down, the audience parted. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He simply walked, head low, face raw with regret. People reached out to touch his shoulder, not out of praise, but forgiveness. Trump remained on stage. The cameras, still rolling on thousands of live streams, followed Jimmy as he exited the studio doors and stepped into the cool night. Outside, protesters had gathered, but something changed. They weren't shouting, some were crying. A young man yelled, "We believed you." Jimmy stopped, turned. "I believed it too," he replied. And for the first time, there was no script, no teleprompter, just a man walking into the world he once misled, now determined to face it. Inside the studio, Trump approached the mic again. He didn't talk about polls or politics or revenge. He said just one line. "Truth doesn't destroy, it sets people free." By morning, America was different. Kimmel's resignation topped every headline. The footage from the night before had already reached over 400 million views across all platforms. Mothers wept, veterans spoke up, schools rewrote lesson plans, and Trump, he didn't gloat. Instead, he visited a firehouse in Ohio. Quiet, respectful. He hugged a mother who lost her son to fentanyl and told her, "You matter. Your story matters." Reporters followed, asking what came next. He simply answered, "We rebuild, not as enemies, but as Americans." Meanwhile, Congress confirmed it would open a formal investigation into media influence and fraud. With multiple subpoenas already issued, Hollywood insiders began to speak. A-list celebrities apologized. And across the country, the laughter stopped and listening began. No one had seen it coming. But in just 1 week, the walls fell, and the truth walked in. Not with noise, but with tears, honesty, and unity. As the credits rolled on the most unforgettable broadcast in television history, Trump faced the camera one last time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't read from a teleprompter. He spoke like a father, like a neighbor, like a man who had been mocked yet stood tall. To the forgotten men and women, to those who've been lied to, laughed at, and locked out. "I never gave up on you, and now the truth is yours." He paused, his voice full of emotion. "This was never about me. It was about you, your dignity, your freedom, your voice." A soft version of "God Bless America" played in the background. Trump looked into the lens. "And if this moment moved you, if you felt the truth in your chest, then do one thing. Like this video, comment below, and hit subscribe. Not just to support me, but to stand for something real." He raised one hand to his heart. "Let's make truth louder than lies." Fade to black. Now it's your turn. Were you moved? Did a part of this story hit home? Drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and hit that subscribe button so we can keep telling the stories they don't want you to hear.